What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's time for the running back rankings. We're going to go over my top 30 running backs in this video, put them into tiers. Gonna be a really long video, so sit back, hit the like button, get a drink, get something to eat. Let's hop into it. So, start things off. Wait, I think everyone is going to have this season. Christian McCaffrey goes in S tier. Best running back. I guess you could argue like best running back in football, like you're talking about receiving, combined, rushing. I would say pretty, widely regarded. Best overall running back in a really good spot. Very creative head coach. They're going to run for a ton of touchdowns, score a ton of touchdowns. There'll be receptions. Just like an amazing environment. Probably don't have to go over him all that much. Turns 27 in June, so he's not too old. The appealing part is just the floor and the ceiling. There is just no outcome besides injury, which you can say for everyone. Everyone get injured. No outcome where McCaffrey is not a very, very high-end fantasy producer. If he's super unlucky with touchdowns, he's still going to score plenty, still have receptions, still have a ton of carries. Like, it's just, the floor is insane. The ceiling is insane. He's the number one overall running back. Very easy there. Also an S tier. And my only other player in S tier, so everyone else will be below this, is Austin Ekeler. ADP, so I guess on the top of the screen, I'm going to put where Underdog's positional ADP is. I know that being best ball, Underdog's ADP aren't always a one-to-one translation with what you're going to see in redraft league, and these are redraft rankings. But positionally, like within positions, they're going to follow very accurately with what you're going to get in a competitive league. So ADP for Underdog, Ekeler is the running back 3. My ranking, running back 2. He has been the running back 7, 13, 3, and 1 in points per game since 2019. And it's the exact same thing with McCaffrey. Chargers going to be a very good offense. We know that even if he has a bad touchdown year, he's still going to have a ton of touchdowns. Like, worst case scenario, Austin Ekeler in touchdowns is like a pretty good outcome for most other players. He had 107 receptions, 18 touchdowns last year, 70 receptions, 20 touchdowns the year before. Turns 28 actually the day this video goes live. So happy birthday, Austin Ekeler. 28 maybe starts to get a little bit scary in some people's minds, but 26, 27, 28, you're in your prime for running backs. Maybe 28's a little bit past it, but I'm only starting to get concerned at like maybe 29's when you start to a little bit think about it, but 30, 31, that's when it's like, whoa. They're getting a little bit up there in age. 28, especially just turning 28, totally fine, not worried about it. McCaffrey, Ekeler, 1 and 2, clearly in my eyes. Number 3 is who's actually number 2 on Underdog, and that's Bijan Robinson. There he is. Okay, right there. First player in A tier, Bijan Robinson. Again, people are taking him second. I have no problem with that because I think everyone in A tier, like everyone has that chance to be the top overall scoring running back. And I think if Bijan at the end of the season had 1,500 rushing yards, 17 rushing touchdowns, added on, I wouldn't say a ton of receptions because I actually don't think he's going to be like, amongst the league leaders in receptions, just kind of given the offense, but like enough receptions. Like he's going to be very good in the receiving game, still get a ton of them, but I don't think he can really challenge like Ekeler and McCaffrey. I think they're kind of on a tier in their own. That's why they're above him. But Bijan, wouldn't be shocked if he was the number 1 overall running back in fantasy. And like some people have actually been like pushing back. It's kind of weird. There's a huge range for Bijan. Some people have him at 2. Some people are like, no, like I don't think he's even a first or second round pick. It's like Algier was running back 22 last season from week 4 on. He was a 5th round pick. He had 17 total targets. He scored 4 touchdowns. Like, this is a good rushing offense and a good environment for a running back to be in. I just can't put him at that first tier, and I can't rank him top 2 because obviously 49ers, Chargers, better offenses. McCaffrey, Ekeler have done it before. I know Bijan's really good, but theoretically we haven't seen it play out yet, and you never know what the Falcons are going to do. Not exactly the most intelligent offense in the world, but another positive. We're talking about Bijan, second easiest schedule for the Falcons. Again, I only lean McCaffrey, Ekeler offenses. There is still a touchdown ceiling on the Falcons compared to those 2 offenses. Next up, Saquon Barkley. And I actually used to have Saquon ahead of Bijan. I kind of thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, no, I really do feel confident in Bijan, putting him ahead of Saquon Barkley. So ADP, Bijan is 5th. my ranking 4th. He was running back 5 in points per game last season, despite 0 touchdowns on 57 receptions. Got to think that's going to regress positively if he has another 57 receptions. We're expecting a couple touchdowns thrown in there. Just turned 26, so right in his prime. I know people think he's getting up there in age. He's breaking down. He's 26 years old. That's not too old for a running back. Also, the offense adding playmakers is going to help him. Hyatt's going to stretch the field. Darren Waller is just going to help make it so it's like there is another weapon on the field, because I don't think Hyatt is like an extreme weapon people are game planning for to be like, got to stop him. It's more stretching the field, making defenses not able to always load the box. It's like, well, he's quite good as a deep threat. You're going to have to take that into account. But Waller, just another threat where defenses are going to have to look at him and be like, well, we do have to stop him. We can't let him shred us. Last year, there was no one else. It was like he had to be the whole offense. I think Saquon can be more efficient this season because defenses aren't just like hyper focused on stopping him. They have other players to worry about. But again, I can't put him above because Giants offense not as good. And I just think Bijan, just a little bit more upside. At this point in their respective careers, probably more talent for Bijan. He goes a little bit ahead. Last player in A tier, Jonathan Taylor. ADP on Underdog is 4, so my ADP, or my ranking, I guess, at 5. Coming off a rough season, definitely. But he's still just 24 years old. The ankle injury, well behind him. He only had a rough year because he was injured. Again, should be 100% good to go this season. And even in a down year, right? 86 total yards per game. So it was kind of worst case scenario for him last season, and he's at 86. That's still a really good number. I'm fully expecting another dominant season from him. Not as much. This is why he's the last person in A tier. If we look at the receiving upside of Bijan, of Saquon, it's higher than Taylor. Could Taylor finish ahead of either of those two? Yes, it could happen. But the ceiling is way higher for the first two. And Jonathan Taylor, just if you think about the offense, they are going to have other backs that they can use in the passing game. And also, Anthony Richardson isn't going to profile as a player who we expect to be dumping off a ton of running backs. Whenever we have these hyper-mobile quarterbacks, they're going to turn plays that a statue in the pocket who would have just had to throw the ball as a dump off, they're going to turn those into better plays for the offense. That's why we like mobile quarterbacks, more efficient. But those are going to turn to carries. And so that's just going to cap a little bit of the upside for Jonathan Taylor in the receiving game, which caps his upside in fantasy. Again, running back 5, still awesome, but that's why he is right there. Headlining the next tier, we've got Nick Chubb. Soon there's going to be fewer players for me to look through, so I'm going to find them a little faster. But tier 2, or tier, I guess, 3 here. B tier. Nick Chubb headlining it. Underdog ADP 6, my ranking 6, so even for both of them. If we look at the rushing yards per game, it's incredible how consistent Chubb has been. 93, 89, 90, 90 for rushing yards per game, within 4 yards per game each of the last 4 seasons. At least 8 touchdowns in all 4. He's been the running back 10, 7, 10, 6. It's he's very likely to finish in that range. And I know you can hear that and be like, well, okay, you have him at 6 and he's very likely to finish 6 through 10. Shouldn't you have him a little bit further back? I mean, you could argue that, but you could also argue that this could be the best year for the Browns. They should be a pretty decent offense this season, should be better than last year. Kareem Hunt is gone. And also, there's value in that safety. There's value in knowing he's absolutely 100% going to have a large role. He's been able to stay healthy. He's been highly productive. There's value in knowing that he's going to be very, very good. I think that it's fair to question if he can be a top 3 running back, given that he's been phenomenal and he hasn't really cracked the top 5. But that's why he's at 6. That's why he doesn't crack into the top tiers. First player in B tier. Josh Jacobs, number 2, coming off very, very, very good season. Underdog ADP 9, my running back 7, so I do have him ahead of ADP. At least 1,200 yards in all 4 seasons of his career, over 2,000 yards last season, and there's no reason to think that anything's going to really change this year. They're going to use him in the same way they used him last season. Now, it's asking a lot to be like, oh, so he'll just repeat those numbers. That's difficult to do. He had a phenomenal, probably the best season of his career. I mean, the odds are that'll be the best year of his career. But like Chubb, there's value in knowing he's going to finish as running back 1 as long as he doesn't get injured. And like, obviously he has upside, right? He was running back 4 in points per game last season, and he was 1 point per game behind Ekeler. So you can't really say, oh, he doesn't have upside. He just had 2,000 yards. If he had more touchdowns, he would have, been up there with McCaffrey and Ekeler. I just put him down here because obviously less confidence than we have in some of the offenses, in like the S tier, of course. And then we've had this like 1 season from breaking out. We haven't seen him do it for like multiple seasons. Like some other players, less talented overall than Bijan. Like there's just reasons he's back down here. But I think I like his ranking at 7. I think very, very quickly from this point on, we're going to be able to poke holes in a lot of these other running backs. What are you doing with Jacobs? What hole are you poking? Like I was not all in on him last season. I thought that they weren't going to use him as much in the receiving game. I thought Jahmry White could eat into the workload. And maybe that was the plan in the summer, but he played so well last season that they just couldn't even go with that plan. Jacobs at 7. I feel good about that. After him, at 8, Tony Pollard. So his ADP is 7, but I have him ranked at 8. Zeke, very likely gone this season. That frees up 231 carries, 23 targets. That's a lot of touches, right? That's a lot of touches vacated in this backfield. And you're like, oh, who they replace it with? I mean, right now, Ronald Jones and Deuce Vaughn, who are not going to combine for those touches. Like they're going to have way below that number. I think my ranking having him here, I do still think in the back of my mind, like they're going to add someone. I really do believe they'll add someone. If they don't, and we start to get, into like the preseason and they haven't added anyone, or these free agents have signed with other teams, I do think I'll move him up. I think he could go as high as 5 even, because he could be the number 1 overall running back if this is the backfield. If it's Pollard, Ronald Jones, and Deuce Vaughn, Tony Pollard is probably a top 5 running back. For right now, until we get closer to the season, I have hesitation because I really do believe that they could add another running back. After him, at the running back 9 spot, Breece Hall, ADP 10, so a little bit ahead of ADP. We all know, coming off a torn ACL, that happened in week 7. Every report so far has been positive, and every indication was that it was going to be. Do not compare his injury to Javonte Williams, who we'll talk about at the end of the video. Different injuries. Both tore their ACL, but Breece Hall didn't tear all these other ligaments, that Javonte Williams did. So we're expecting a very long recovery for Javonte Williams. We're expecting Breece Hall to be good to go, either very early in the season or in week 1. And had he not gotten injured, he would have probably won Rookie of the Season. Rookie of the Year. I don't know why I said season there. And he'd probably be a first-round pick. Like that would be my guess, is that in fantasy football, he'd be a first-round pick. You're able to consistently get him in the 3rd round right now. I started an Underdog draft with Cooper Kupp, then Jonathan Taylor, then Breece Hall. And I think that's a really good start. If you're getting him as your running back 2, when you also have Cooper Kupp or like another top 5 wide receiver, that's a lot of upside, especially in an offense that the Jets aren't a lock to be amazing, but they're probably going to be a really, really good offense this season. And they're probably going to win a lot of games and be up a lot of second halves. Next up, Derrick Henry, my ranking, running back 10, Underdog, running back 8. Although I will say he falls a lot. So maybe on average he goes 8. I have had drafts where he is my 3rd running back drafted. Like there are definitely leagues you'll be in where he slips way further than he should. Again, I've gotten him a few times as my running back 3. That is absurd. 110 rushing yards per game over the last 4 years, 58 touchdowns in 55 games over that stretch. That is insane. I think that Tyjae Spears is good. I think that long term, maybe he has a shorter career, but again, like we've talked about, who cares in the immediate 3 years, right? That just means he probably won't have a 10-year running back career, but this is a redraft video. Who cares? I think Spears is really, really good. That's going to hurt the ceiling for Derrick Henry. It's going to hurt the floor a little bit as well, I'm projecting, I think it's 272 carries. You can check the website for that. But under 300, I'm projecting for him. And that means he could drop down to 1,200 to 1,300 rushing yards. If he's in that 10 to 12 touchdown range, he's going to be a running back 1. It's just if they now have another running back that can help out, because in the past they've really had no one that can do anything even close to what he could do. So they had to be giving him these carries. I just don't think he's going to get up to 22 carries per game like you saw last season, especially if they start slow. 7.5 win total, 7.5 win total overall for the Titans. Just a chance that they start off bad. They're 2-4. Start to play out these games. They don't think they're making playoffs. Maybe they lean on Spears. Maybe something happens where they're not giving Henry a billion touches. That's possible. And especially remember, Derrick Henry, a player who does a lot worse in losses than he does wins. There's juice on the under here. They could easily have 6 or 7 wins this season, and that's going to be bad for him in fantasy. Again, everyone so far is a fantastic pick in like the top 3 rounds. Just, Henry's obviously not as good as he was in the past. C tier. Now we are getting into a lot more question marks for all these players. So we started to poke a few holes in some people so far. C tiers, we're going to start to really get a few more, and then every tier after that, there are problems with a lot of these players. Comes at an ADP discount, of course, but there are problems. Not too many problems, though, with Jahmry Gibbs. ADP 13, my ranking 11. I've been getting a good amount. I think, honestly, he's going to finish in that like 10 to 12 range for ADP. I think he's going to be everything that we wanted Swift to be. It's an elite offense. If we look last season, running backs for the Lions ranked 8th in receptions, 3rd in touches, 1st in fantasy points per game, and then they upgraded Swift to Gibbs. Like, this backfield is a gold mine for fantasy, and they just spent the 12th overall pick on drafting Gibbs. Like, it just makes all the sense in the world that it's going to be an awesome offense. You're going to want the running backs in fantasy. We're going to talk about Dave Montgomery soon, who I'm well ahead of ADP on. It is the dream backfield. Running backs produce extraordinarily well in the Lions backfield. They upgraded both of their running backs. It's going to be awesome watching them this season. He's a very, very high upside, very, very high floor pick. Stevenson, next running back. Running back 11, my 12, so right around ADP. 14th in points per game last season, but he was only 0.4 points per game off of 11th. He was also the running back 8 from week 3 on, so start off a little bit slow, but week 3 on, he was the running back 8. He was a low-end running back 1. I think everyone that had him agreed. It was pretty awesome having Stevenson in fantasy last season, especially for where you got him in the draft. Patriots let Dameon Harris walk in free agency and then didn't draft a running back. Sounds great, right? Now, I could see them. It's the same thing with Tony Pollard. I can see the Patriots adding someone. That's why I don't want to move him up too much. But if the Patriots do not add another running back, he's definitely moving up in the rankings. And as we move throughout the summer, he goes up. So Stevenson and Pollard, if it were week 1 right now, would be ranked higher. It's just I have hesitations because there are free agents out there that could really hurt. And I think both those teams could add one of them. 13th running back, Travis Etienne. Underdog ADP is 12, so again, right at ADP. Although I'll say I've completed a few drafts so far, and then I'm in a lot of slow drafts where we're past the ADP for Etienne. So I have maybe like 10 drafts right now that I've completed at least the ADP for Etienne. I don't think I have him in a single league. I think people are a little bit overlooking the Jaguars taking Tank Bigsby in the 3rd round. That was earlier than a lot of people thought, and it was earlier people thought that the Jaguars would take a running back in general. So they clearly like him. And Bigsby's also a player that can do everything. It's not like he's just early down, just receiving. And so they could kind of use it to just not give Etienne too many touches. And that's obviously going to hurt him. And I just basically go back to I think it's a good offense. And so I think people are just trying to target the offense. I'd rather do that through Calvin Ridley. He's got a solid ADP. Do it through Christian Kirk if he's going to fall and people don't want him. Do it through Trevor Lawrence. Just capture the quarterback play, a really high-end prospect. I don't think Etienne is a player I want to be gaining exposure to in this offense. I'll get some of him because I don't want to go through 150 drafts, Best Ball Mania 4 and just not have any, right? Because then if he goes off, I just lose all of those. You wouldn't lose all of them. But the point being, I don't want a complete fade. But if you're drafting, say, 1 team, 2 teams, 3 teams, I don't know. He's just not a player that's usually on my list. And even when he's a top player, I typically am leaning wide receiver. Maybe I'm going quarterback in that range. Maybe there's a nice tight end there. It's I like my ranking here for running backs. It's just a player that I don't really end up with a lot. And it's similar with the next player, Najee Harris. Maybe I have 1 Najee Harris share right now, but I haven't been drafting him even when he's a top player. Underdog EDP 14, my running back 14. It's like, running back wise, it's not a bad pick, obviously. But I just haven't really been going there. 3.9 and 3.8 yards per carry last 2 seasons, 6.3 and 5.6 yards per reception. That's not good. Running back 19 in points per game last season, despite 313 touches and 10 touchdowns. That's a lot. 313 touches, 10 touchdowns are really good numbers. 19th in points per game. Now, to be fair, he's running back 5 overall from week 10 on, so post-bye. I had that injury to start the season, so maybe that was partly doing it, but he has not been efficient. It has all been volume, and so if the volume stays, he can be good. I don't know. At a certain point, if he's going to continue being this inefficient, the volume probably won't stay. And so also when there's a high opportunity cost, there's still plenty of great players at other positions, just like Etienne. Just a player that I'll get to if he falls, but I haven't really been so far. The D tier, we're going to start off with Aaron Jones, running back 16 by Underdog ADP, running back 15 by my rankings. I think people thought the season last year was a little bit worse than it was for Aaron Jones. Over 1,500 yards, 59 receptions. The thing that hurt him was the 7 touchdowns, right? If he had gotten up to what he's normally been at for touchdowns, would have been better. Finishes 11th in points per game. So not terrible. Definitely not what you wanted when you drafted him, but it wasn't like a horrendous season for Aaron Jones. Thing is, it's tough to rank him higher than this and tough to put him into any of these top 4 tiers because we don't really know how good's the offense going to be. How good is Jordan Love going to be? How much is Jordan Love going to throw to running backs? Well, what's their pass play rate and run play rate going to be in the red zone? There are so many unknowns that it's maybe Jordan Love dumps it off a ton. Maybe Jordan Love's really good. Maybe they go run heavy in the red zone. But maybe those things also don't happen, and maybe this is a much worse offense than we want it to be. And so I don't know. I think I like him in this general 15-16 range, but definitely would not want to go drafting I wouldn't want to say, oh, I love him. I'm going to draft him as running back 12. I'm going to reach by ADP. He's a player that also other people got burned on in the past. And so there could be situations where you're in a league and he drops to the running back 18, running back 19. That's where I want him because he's still a really, really good talent. He's a really efficient player. He definitely has upside. It's just I don't want to reach for that upside. I want him to be an ADP value when I draft him. So even though I have him ranked one spot ahead of ADP, I want him to be a value by ADP when I'm drafting him. Hope that makes sense. Miles Sanders, player I would say a little bit more. I'd probably be a little bit more willing to reach on Miles Sanders. My running back 16, ADP running back 17, 4-year, $25.4 million contract this season, $13 million guaranteed. It was the best deal of any running back in the offseason. Only competition is Chuba Hubbard. They've talked about wanting to get him back to his rookie season numbers where they're getting him more 50 receptions. If he gets 50 receptions this season, he's going to shatter that ADP. I don't have him projected anywhere close to 50, still ahead of ADP on him. I really like him. 3rd easiest strength of schedule. The only real negative is the offense. Obviously, the Panthers aren't going to be an amazing offense, but as we'll talk about with some Eagles players in this video, it's not like the Eagles' backfield was actually insane for fantasy. They weren't getting a ton of touches in general. They weren't targeted a ton. There's at least a chance that the Panthers really feature Miles Sanders. His touches go way up. His opportunity near the goal line goes way up because Jalen Hurts isn't running for a touchdown every time. So a lot of upside for him this season. I really like Miles Sanders, second player in D tier. After that, David Montgomery, running back 17, 27 by Underdog ADP. This is the biggest ADP difference that we have in this video. 3-year, $18 million contract this offseason, $11 million guaranteed. As we said before, 8th in receptions. The Lions' backfield last season with Swift and Jamal Williams. 2 downgrades from what we have right now. 8th in receptions, 3rd in touches, 1st in fantasy points per game. Again, David Montgomery is better than Jamal Williams. I'll fight anyone that says differently. He's a better player. He's a very, very good player. And it's also the upside talk, right? In any week that Gibbs misses, which we're not expecting him to miss time, but if it were to happen, if we're thinking about, 90th percentile outcomes here, obviously David Montgomery is a top 5 running back. I don't even care who they're playing. He's a top 5 running back in those weeks. He's likely like a flex player, like a low-end running back 2 in the weeks that Gibbs is healthy. But Detroit, 8th easiest strength of schedule, 9.5 win total. They're going to be a good season, or they're going to have a good season. Going to be a really good team. They're the favorites to win the NFC North. 4th best chance to win the NFC. Like, I'm going to have a lot of David Montgomery shares this season. If his ADP is going to stay at 27, no, that is incorrect. You need to be grabbing a lot of Montgomery. So much upside, and that upside can still hit even if Gibbs is healthy. Obviously, the max ceiling won't be there while he is healthy, but in any weeks Gibbs misses, oh my goodness. Like, you can still draft him at this ADP because this ADP assumes Gibbs stays fully healthy. Wow. I mean, the upside is absolutely insane if he ever got hurt. Joe Mixon up next. We don't actually know, the landing spot for Mixon. I also don't know where he's on the screen here. There he is. Last player in D tier. We don't know where he's ending up, but it's looking much more likely that he's going to be on the Bengals this season. ADP running back 20. I've seen him fall much further than that when people are scared. My running back 18, so I think he's a good value right now. Again, probably staying in Cincy. Only real competition there is Chase Brown. 19.6, 23.3, 20.9, 19.3. There's touches per game over the last 4 years. He's getting in that 19 to 23 touches range. Probably going to happen again this season if he can stay healthy and stay on the Bengals. Running back 17, 9, 4, 8 in points per game over the last 4 years. It's a value. Running back 20 is a value for Joe Mixon, even if you don't think he's going to be as efficient as he has been in the past. It's such a good environment. There is such little, realistically, there's little competition for him. I think he stays. I think he's going to have a really good year. And honestly, even if he's suspended for like 2 games, who cares? You're still getting a really good discount on him. Hopefully it falls even more if we get that sort of news. E tier, first player, Ken Walker. I think people are definitely overprojecting him this season. I want to remain below ADP wherever it goes. I think it will go down. Underdog ADP running back 15. My running back 19. They draft Charbonnet. They draft Kenny McIntosh. That's going to hurt. Ken Walker had 27 receptions last season, even though every other running back on the roster got injured. All these other running backs, and some of them much better pass catching, all get hurt. There were games where it was like only Ken Walker was able to play, really. 27 receptions. He's not a receiving back. He's now the 3rd best receiving back on the roster. He is not going to have a lot of receptions. They are going to have Charbonnet play on early downs. We know that they even added Jackson Smith-Njigba. He's going to take a lot of these short area looks. Like, there's going to be more targets to wide receivers, even fewer to running backs. Like, he's not going to have receptions. I think people are undervaluing how important that is, how much it impacts his floor and his ceiling. He could have a very, very low floor this season. I don't want him. I'm not going to end up with very many shares. Again, I'm only 4 spots behind his positional ADP right now, but I won't be drafting him. I'm just going to stay below where he is. Next up, we've got Isiah Pacheco. Running back 23 by ADP, my running back 20. He was running back 14 from week 11 on last season, was by far the best running back on the Kansas City roster. The things that hurt him, though, he's inconsistent in the passing game. He's never going to be like a super high-end receiving back. They're going to have specialists to kind of do that, and they brought back Jerick McKinnon, so that's going to be his role. And then also, like, you just think they're going to be rotating through. They're obviously never going to be a team that leans on the run. They have Patrick Mahomes, and so he's a player that he's very likely going to be in this range, and he's probably going to outproduce his ADP by a little bit, but he's not super likely to finish as like a top 7 running back. He's probably not going to just like explode, way outproduce his ADP and be a league winner because of that. So I typically only draft players like that when they're a value by ADP. So if he falls to running back 24, 25, that's when I'll pounce on that. Otherwise, I'll probably just be looking like in this range, wide receivers, tight ends, quarterback. Like, it's a good range in there for those positions. If Pacheco falls, becomes a value, I'll take him. But positionally, he's theoretically a value. I don't find myself going out of my way to draft him because the ceiling isn't as high as I'd like. Dalvin Cook, next up in this tier. Exactly running back 21 in my rankings and on Underdog. It completely depends where he's going to play this season. I could see him being cut and go to Denver. That's something I've seen float around. I could see him getting cut and going to some of these backfields that we've been, concerned with. Does he go to Dallas? Does he go to New England? Teams like that lost people in free agency and didn't really add them yet. Does he go to the Bucks. Like there's a lot of different teams that he could still land on and like still be productive in fantasy. So I like where I have him right now. Another player though that like Mixon, like sometimes you're in a league where they just get scared and he falls a lot past his ADP. That's where I want to be targeting him. Not a lot of fantastic landing spots, so it's not like it's like, oh, hopefully he goes here and then he'll be awesome. Like that really doesn't exist. But we could also get a situation where, I mean, what if they just restructure? Like, what if he just is like, okay, I'm not going to get that much if I get cut and I sign with a new team and I won't love my role. Why don't I just stay with the Vikings? I'll take, whatever contract they give me that's a little bit better for the team. I could see that working out. Like, we'll probably know in like June, July what's going to happen there. I don't think we'll know before June 1st because they have to cut him after June 1st to save a lot of money. But who really knows? His value is going to depend on what happens with that situation. Rachaad White up next. Running back 25 by ADP, my running back 22. Alluded to it before. The risk is, do they bring someone else in? Sean Tucker right now is really the only competition. But it's like Fournette, Zeke, Hunt, Dalvin Cook. They could all end up on this backfield. And if they do, that's going to crater his value. So that's why it's not a little bit higher. Like with Pollard, like with Stevenson, Rachaad White, someone that if it's the same situation now, if this were week 1, he'll be higher. It's just we kind of have to wait and see if he's going to go up. But like, Fournette had 262 touches last season, and White was still able to get 50 receptions. Like he's a really good player, really good receiving back. A lot of upside, but will they add someone? Cam Akers. Next up, running back 23 in my rankings, 24 by ADP. He was a running back 4 in the final 6 weeks of the season. Didn't do too much before that though. Of course, was coming off the torn Achilles. It's just I don't know. Like no one really knows with Cam Akers. He's a risky pick. He's a high upside pick, but like he's just turning 24 years old. He's been highly productive at times. It's just kind of mixed in with like no production at all. The team going away from him. They only added Zach Evans in the 6th round of the draft, so there's not a lot of competition for him. He's going to get a chance to be the number 1 running back and be productive in fantasy. It's will he produce? I don't really know the answer to that. He's a great pick in like RB0 builds, in Hero RB builds, because yeah, he could be a top 10 running back. We've seen twice now throughout his career that he's had stretches where that's true. It's just that he also has a very, very low floor, and that's why he probably deserves to go in this range. Dameon Pierce, probably someone that honestly, like, I might be a little bit too low on. Maybe I do need to bring him up. I've kind of asked you guys in like 2 different videos what your take is on Pierce, and it seems like you guys are pretty in on him. So could I see a situation where it's like, all right, I move him over Akers, and then it's like, okay, well, the Bucks added someone, and Dalvin got cut, and then I gained more confidence in him than Pacheco, and then I don't like Ken Walker, so I just put him there, and then he's leading E tier. I can't do it on the screen right now, but like, yeah, I could see that kind of work out. So even though he's the 6th player in E tier right now, I could see him leading the E tier by the end of the summer. So ADP on Underdog 19 right now, my running back 24, and I have still gotten him. So even having him 5 ADP spots behind ADP, I've gotten some shares of Pierce because he has fallen in leagues. That's kind of given me the confidence to not rank him much higher, because if I can still get him here, why would I keep ranking him higher than that? But yeah, I mean, he was 23rd in points per game last season despite averaging 19 touches per game. Like that's the concern, is that he can get a ton of touches, but if he's inefficient on a really bad offense, because not because he's a bad player, just because it's a really bad offense, and if the touchdown upside isn't there because it's a pretty bad offense, and if they're losing a lot of games, so they can't give him as many, 30 touch games, it's like, there are reasons why he should be ranked a little bit lower. So it's like, how much room do you have to go up if you're 23rd in points per game on 19 touches? Like, do you think he's getting 25 touches per game? Like, no, obviously not. So that's why I have him this low. But again, I'm still getting him because I love the player, I love the talent, and I'm not like super high on Devin Singletary. The last player in E tier is J.K. Dobbins. ADP on Underdog is 18. I think that's a little bit too high. My running back 25. I've gotten him maybe in 1 league, but that might be the most. I like him as a player. I think he's going to be 100% this season. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry last year when he wasn't 100%, 6 yards per carry as a rookie. Like, he's clearly a very talented player. It's going to be a highly efficient offense. There'll be plenty of scoring opportunities for him. The cap is just like receptions. He's never, just because of how Lamar Jackson plays, he's not going to target running backs a lot, so Dobbins is not going to have a lot of receptions. that's a problem, obviously, because Lamar's also going to take rushing touchdowns near the goal line. And in fantasy, you get your upside through touchdowns and receptions. If both of those are getting hurt a lot of the time, you can have a lot of rushing yards, but that's not amazing in fantasy. So another player I like, I will draft if he becomes a top player in the running back rankings. It hasn't happened a ton because I question the upside with receptions. All right, 5 more players in F tier, and then we'll get out of here. Actually, we're going to mention some players after that, but only a few players left. I know it's a very long video, but hopefully this is very informative for all of you. First player in F tier, my running back 26, underdog ranking 26, is James Conner. You all know, if you've watched me for the past 4 or 5 years, I'm not a huge James Conner fan, especially this season. Like, the offense is going to be so bad when Kyler Murray is out, and I'm not expecting Kyler Murray to start the season healthy. He's probably going to miss a good chunk of time. And so when you've got Conner, a historically very touchdown-dependent player, on a team that I believe currently I have projected for the fewest touchdowns in the NFL, that hurts. He is not going to have a lot of rushing yards. He can have receptions, especially because if you look at the depth chart, I mean, it's a dumpster fire behind James Conner. You're really just hoping for a bunch of garbage time dump-offs, which are probably going to happen, but I just don't like investing in touchdown-dependent running backs on awful offenses. And if Kyler's going to miss time, which I think he is, it's not going to be a good offense. I don't love it. DeAndre Swift, after that, probably someone people disagree with. Underdog ADP 22, my running back 27. Amazing upside this season. Another player that is an exceptional pick in RB0 builds and in hero RB builds because he's got a ton of upside. The problem is, I think Penny's going to get most of the carries. I mean, not like all the carries, but most of the running back carries when he's healthy. The thing is, like, Penny's never healthy, so that's where the upside of Swift obviously comes in. But Philly had the 2nd fewest running back targets in the league last season. They had the 8th fewest touches overall. It's like, this is a really, really good landing spot for Penny. Penny fits this beautifully. Swift, if they don't throw to the running backs that much, and to be honest, they don't give the running backs a ton of opportunities when they get close. A lot of them go to Jalen Hurts. And if you had to guess, wouldn't you think Penny would get those because he's the bigger back? Historically the more, goal line player. I don't know. I think people are going to want Swift to work, and I think it can if Penny gets hurt. That's where the upside comes in. So I'll draft him, but I don't typically get as much because people really reach on Swift. James Cook, running back 28, running back 30 by ADP. Another player where it's like, I forget who I mentioned with this before. If I can think of, I think it was Pacheco. It was like, I have him a little bit of ADP, but I haven't really been drafting James Cook just because, like, I think he's a good talent, but Buffalo averaged the 2nd fewest touches per game last season for running backs. And if we think about, it's a fantastic red zone offense, right? They're going to score a ton of touchdowns. Well, they did last season, and they had the 4th fewest red zone fantasy points per game for running backs. That's not great. And you're like, okay, they replaced Singletary with Dameon Harris, who's a better goal line back than Singletary. So James Cook is not going to have rushing touchdowns. He is not going to be a high-end rusher. He is honestly, like, his thing is receiving, but Josh Allen doesn't throw a ton to running backs. It's like you start to think about it and you're like, where is the upside for James Cook? Is it if Harris gets injured and Josh Allen is told he's not allowed to run at the goal line and he has to use James Cook at the goal line and throw to him and stuff? It's like, there's a lot of playmakers on this team. There's a lot of touchdowns to go around, but to a lot of really good players, and a lot of them are better than James Cook. So I don't buy it. I don't love him as like a league winner or anything. And yet I have him ranked 28th. I think that's really just like the average ranking. I think I need to drop him down a few spots because it's like, I just don't see the upside. And if I don't see the upside, I don't want to draft a running back in these middle rounds. These middle rounds are a gold mine for wide receiver, tight end, quarterback. The opportunity cost is so high that even if I have him ranked positionally this high, I have not been drafting James Cook. Next 2 players, Alvin Kamara, and we'll close it out with A.J. Dillon. Kamara, running back 31 by ADP. My running back 29 completely comes down to the suspension. If it's 0 games, he's going to go way up. If it's 6 games, probably drops a little bit. I'm assuming 4 games right now. I drafted him and Kendre Miller in the mock draft Monday. I think that's a good idea. You basically get that assuredness, and it's like, it comes at a way better cost. Like historically, it's been like, okay, take Alvin Kamara in round 1, and then what, Mark Ingram in round like 8. It was kind of like that was like your safety net. Now it's like what? This is an ADP of like round 7 for Kamara. I got Kendra Miller in like the 13th. Like that's way better draft capital given up to just capture a backfield. I know Jamal Williams is there. I know Jamal Williams will be used, but there's still upside in taking 2 of these players, especially if, you can use Kendra Miller during the suspension. You can use Kamara when he's back from suspension. But yeah, I don't want to rank him too high. I have gotten him, and I got him in a few builds that I went like running back heavy early, and I just took 4 total running backs. And it was like, that was actually the league that I drafted Henry. I can't remember the exact team, but I think I got like, I think it was like Ekeler. I know I had a team where I got Ekeler, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, and Alvin Kamara. I think those were my 4 running backs, and then I just drafted a bunch of wide receivers other than that. So it's like, those are kind of the builds that I would want. Again, this is not an underdog video, but like you're not, like there's no drafts right now for non-underdog leagues, so I just kind of have to mention that. But I would be more willing to do that and just kind of shoot for the moon, or do it, I guess, on like an RB0 build where you're like, hopefully this is drafting Kamara way later than he'll end up being valued at. But yeah, I don't think you should go too much earlier than this because there's talent in this backfield. They're going to use his other running backs, and he could be suspended. Then finally, A.J. Dillon, underdog ranking 33rd, my running back 30. I actually think I might drop A.J. Dillon a little bit after this video for kind of some of the reasons I talked about before. How good is Jordan Love going to be? How much is he going to throw to running backs? How much is he going to run at the goal line? We don't know the answers to these questions. It becomes risky. And he's available pretty late in drafts. He falls a lot. So I think I'm going to drop him. But right now, he's my last player in F tier, running back 30. Final 2 things we'll go over before we hop out of here. Probably been a really, really long video. But again, hopefully informative. 2 players that are inside the underdog top 30 that are not inside my top 30. Javonte Williams, he's at 28. My running back 32. I don't trust the knee. I don't think he's fully healthy until 2024. And then Alexander Mattison, running back 29 by ADP, my running back 33. That's just because of too much uncertainty. I don't want to spend a running back 29 pick if there's still a chance Dalvin Cook returns to the offense. If Dalvin Cook does not return, I'll move him up, probably into the upper, even mid, probably like the mid-20s. I don't really know exactly where it's going to be. I have to do out the full projection. It's just not a lock that happens, and this is like definitely too early if Dalvin Cook returned. So that'll do it for the top 30 running backs by tiers. Very long video. My voice is really hurting. Went to the Celtics game 7 yesterday, so it was already hurting before that. Go Celtics on the win there. But yeah, drop a like if you watched this far. You had to somewhat like the video if you're somehow still watching at this point. I'll be back tomorrow to do a running back breakdown video. Then Friday to the same thing, top 30 wide receivers. That, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoy. If you did, how about hitting the like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? But thanks for watching.